Hey there, and welcome back to Just About Earth. This is the place where curiosity gets to stretch its legs, and science feels less like a textbook and more like a late-night conversation. Tonight, we've got a thought experiment that doesn't soar into the stars or reach for the horizon. Instead, it invites us to sink. It asks us to turn our attention away from the sky and look down, beneath the soil, past the bedrock, and into the vast, hidden spaces of the planet we call home. What if the very first true civilization, not just a few families sheltering from a storm, but a real, thriving society didn't live on the surface at all? What if it was born and raised entirely underground? I know, it sounds like something straight out of an old adventure novel, the kind of story you'd whisper to friends when the lights are low and your imagination is running wild. And yet, the idea kind of sticks with you, doesn't it? Because for all our talk about the vastness of the sky, the truth is there's far more space beneath our feet than there is above our heads. The Earth itself stretches down into layers and depths we almost never see or even think about. So, within all that hidden space, is it really so impossible that life, human life, organized, complex, and enduring once made its home there? Before we get too deep into that, just do me a favor. Take a second and think about where you are right now. Are you in a city apartment with the muffled hum of traffic just outside your window? Maybe you're in a quiet house, where the only sound is the gentle breathing of an appliance. Or maybe you're already lying in the dark, eyes closed, just letting these words wash over you. Wherever you are, I want you to picture this. Right beneath you, deeper than the pipes and foundations, there aren't just layers of rock and soil. Imagine passageways, massive chambers, whole networks of space where footsteps once echoed, where the warm light of torches once flickered against the stone, and where voices spoke in languages that have long since been forgotten. If this kind of wandering thought feels soothing to you, or maybe just a welcome distraction from the rush of your day, I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit the like button, maybe subscribe, or even share this little pocket of calm with someone else who might enjoy it. The more people who find these quiet journeys, the more of them we can continue to make. The call of the cave. So, let's start this journey not with a bold claim or a search for proof, but with simple, open curiosity. Because the idea of underground civilizations, whether they were real, just imagined, or something in between, has always held a strange power over us. Think about the first time you ever saw the entrance to a cave. Maybe it was in person, or just in a picture, or even a cartoon as a kid. It feels different than a clearing in a forest or a stretch of beach, doesn't it? Caves don't just sit there. They seem to call you inward. They feel like doorways to another world. A world that's darker, quieter, and feels almost completely outside of time. And for as long as we've been human, we've answered that call. Tens of thousands of years ago, our ancestors didn't just duck into caves to get out of the rain. They went deep inside, into the total darkness, and they decorated them. They painted the walls with incredible images of animals, with symbols, with scenes from their lives. These weren't the actions of people who were just hiding. These were acts of ceremony, of belonging. The underground wasn't just a place to wait out the weather. It was a place that felt important, powerful, maybe even sacred. And it wasn't just art. Early humans learned to trust the earth. They dug pits to store food, keeping it safe and cool. They found chambers in the rock to store water. And they buried their dead beneath the ground, entrusting the earth with their ancestors. In a very real sense, our relationship with the world below is as old as we are. We have always trusted it to hold the things that matter to us, our harvests, our memories, and our loved ones. But what if, at some point, a group of people decided to do more than just visit? What if they decided to stay? Not just for a night or a season, but for generations. What if an entire community looked at the chaotic, unpredictable surface world and decided that the real promise of safety, of stability, lay beneath their feet? Imagine waking up not to the slow creep of sunlight, but to the steady, warm glow of firelight on ancient stone walls. Imagine growing up without ever seeing a horizon. Your entire sense of space would be measured by the width of a cavern, and your sense of time would be marked not by dawn and dusk, but by the steady rhythm of shared routines. For us, that sounds alien, unnatural. But for a community born and raised in that world, it would be perfectly normal. It would be home. This isn't quite as strange as it might sound. There are places on Earth where people have lived, at least partially, underground for centuries. In the blistering deserts of Iran, entire towns were once built around underground aqueducts and cool, subterranean living spaces. In the Cappadocia region of Turkey, people carved vast, multi-level underground cities into the soft volcanic rock. Some of these hidden cities were big enough to hold thousands of people, complete with homes, stables, and places of worship. They weren't fantasy, they were brilliant, real-world solutions to the dangers of extreme climates and constant warfare. But what if that wasn't just a strategy for survival that came later? What if, from the very beginning, humanity's first real attempt at building a lasting civilization started down there, not up here? Think about the advantages. You'd have perfect protection from the weather. No floods, no blizzards, no droughts. You'd have natural insulation from scorching heat and brutal cold. You'd be completely concealed from predators and hostile groups. The surface is exposed, unpredictable, and often terrifyingly dangerous. Underground, things change slowly. The temperature is stable. There's a profound quiet. There's safety. For a small group of people trying to survive long enough to become something more than just scattered families, the Earth itself would have seemed like the strongest roof you could ever ask for. Life without a sky. Of course, this immediately brings up the big practical questions. Food, water, energy. How on earth would they manage? It's one thing to hide in a cave. It's another thing entirely to build a thriving culture there. But if we look to nature, we see examples everywhere that it's not impossible. Fungi grow perfectly well without a single ray of sunlight, feeding on decaying matter in the soil. Certain species of fish and insects live their entire lives in the pitch black of deep caverns, evolving over millions of years to a point where they don't even have eyes. Bacteria flourish in the deep crust of the Earth, drawing their energy not from light, but from chemical reactions in the rock itself. Water is often abundant underground, trickling through cracks in the rock and pooling in subterranean rivers and vast aquifers. If a group of people could learn to harness these hidden resources to cultivate edible fungi, to farm cave-dwelling insects, to catch blind fish, and to use fire not just for warmth but for light and cooking, they could have built an entire, self-sustaining culture right there in the dark. Think about the children who would be raised in an environment like that. For them, the sun would be a myth, a rumor from the storytellers, maybe even a frightening one. The idea of the sky endless, open, and exposed might feel terrifying compared to the safety of a stone ceiling and predictable solid walls. Their myths wouldn't tell stories of gods living in the heavens above, but perhaps of ancient dangers lurking upward, waiting to punish anyone who dared to stray too close to the surface world. And it's not just survival that could happen underground. It's culture. Voices carry differently in stone corridors. Music, chanting, and ritual would echo and fill the air in ways that a surface society could never replicate. Their stories wouldn't be told under the faint light of the stars, but by the dramatic, flickering light of torches, where shadows would dance on the walls like living illustrations, bringing every tale to life. So, if such a civilization could have existed, why haven't we found undeniable proof? Well, maybe it's because evidence doesn't last the same way underground. Tunnels collapse. Chambers flood. Over thousands of years, sediment can bury and completely erase whatever was there. On the surface, ruins can be uncovered by the wind or shifting sands. But underground ruins might be sealed away forever, locked behind massive rockfalls, eventually becoming indistinguishable from the natural formations around them. If an entire society once thrived beneath us, the Earth itself may have simply and silently hidden away all of its traces. And yet, the idea just won't leave us alone. Again and again, myths and legends from every corner of the world return to it. Stories of Agartha, of Shambhala, of the hollow earth tales of hidden kingdoms, filled with either profound peace or terrifying danger, waiting far below. Perhaps they're nothing more than the products of human imagination. But the fact that these stories repeat across so many different cultures suggests something deeper is going on. Maybe it's not that there was a literal underground empire. Maybe it's that, on some level, we all feel the pull of the underground. We sense that life down there isn't just possible, but in some ways almost inevitable. Even modern science seems to feed into that feeling. When researchers explore the deepest caves on Earth, they consistently find life where they expected to find nothing at all. Microbes that survive in total darkness. Strange insects, perfectly adapted to a world of blackness. Unique, isolated ecosystems that thrive without a single drop of sunlight. Every new discovery seems to whisper the same quiet message. Life doesn't need the sky. It can make do with far, far less. And so, it doesn't take a huge leap of imagination to stretch that one step further. Perhaps our first true civilization wasn't a small cluster of huts sitting under the sun, but a network of warm, protected chambers hidden beneath it. Perhaps our story doesn't begin with the sky above us, but with stone all around us. There's a certain kind of humility in that idea, isn't there? We tend to think of ourselves as creatures of the light. We prize the stars. We build massive towers that scrape the sky. We climb the highest mountains. But maybe our beginnings were darker, quieter, and much more hidden. And if that's true, then even as we look outward to the cosmos, we're always carrying a little piece of that hidden, subterranean past right along with us. This thought doesn't have to end here. It's not a conclusion, it's an opening. We're going to wander deeper into why humans are so obsessed with imagining hidden worlds, how the myths of underground realms have shaped who we are, and what modern science has actually uncovered about the reality of subterranean life. Because the real question isn't just whether such a civilization existed, but why the idea of it continues to matter so much to us. The geography of imagination. If the idea of a whole civilization living right under our feet feels strangely natural to imagine, it's worth stopping to ask why. Why do we, as human beings, keep inventing stories about hidden worlds, about secret realms that exist just out of sight, deep inside of caves or buried beneath mountains? Why is it so much easier for us to believe in the possibility of a lost city underground than, say, a lost city floating in the sky? It seems like our imagination has always had a special, almost magnetic relationship with the spaces below us, a fascination that goes back as far as recorded history, and probably much, much further. Part of the answer is pretty simple. The underground is mysterious. For most of human history, the surface world was already dangerous enough, full of predators, violent storms, rival tribes, and an environment that could change in an instant. But at least you could see the surface. You could scan the sky for storm clouds or watch the horizon for movement. The underground, by contrast, was a complete unknown. The moment you step into a cave, the light vanishes. Shadows play tricks on your eyes and swallow your sense of direction. A single wrong turn can leave you completely disoriented. For early humans, this wasn't just unsettling, it was terrifying. And yet, fear is often the fuel for imagination. When we can't see what's right in front of us, we fill the darkness with stories. Think about the first person who ever dared to walk into a deep cave, carrying nothing but a burning branch. Every flicker of the flame would have revealed bizarre, twisting shapes on the walls. Strange echoes would have bounced back from the darkness ahead. Every movement in the shadows could have been a bat, or it could have been something else entirely. It would have been completely natural to believe that something lived in there, something unseen, something ancient and powerful, or perhaps something monstrous and dangerous, waiting for those who dared to intrude. From that potent mix of fear and wonder, stories are born. And stories are powerful things. Once they're told, they stick. If you start to imagine spirits or gods living in the depths, then a cave is no longer just a hole in the rock. It becomes a portal. It becomes the entrance to another world. Children hear those stories, and they grow up and repeat them. The idea spreads, and it's reinforced not just by the mystery of the caves themselves, but by the powerful feelings they provoke in every single generation. Psychologists often point out that humans are pattern-seeking creatures. We hate having empty spaces in our knowledge. When we find a gap, we instinctively fill it with a narrative. The underground is the ultimate gap. It hides everything from view. We can only see as far as our light reaches. Beyond that, it's a total unknown. And the unknown rarely stays empty in the human mind. It quickly becomes populated with imagined societies, with monsters, with the spirits of ancestors, or with divine beings. But it isn't only fear. The underground also promises something entirely different. Safety. We know from countless archaeological discoveries that caves offered our ancestors shelter from storms, from predators, and even from enemy groups. A cave is far easier to defend than an open field. It's enclosed, it's stable, and the environment inside is predictable. This strange combination of fear and safety is what makes the underground so magnetic. It's both threatening and comforting. It's a place of dread, and a place of refuge at the exact same time. It's no wonder our imagination loves to linger there. Cultures from all over the world have created powerful myths that describe entire worlds existing right beneath the surface. In Greek mythology, the underworld wasn't just some gloomy pit. It was a highly organized realm with its own rulers, its own rivers, and its own distinct regions. The Mayans told epic stories of Xibalba, a vast subterranean domain where the souls of the dead had to face a series of terrifying trials. In Norse traditions, there were hidden worlds buried deep beneath the roots of the world tree, Yggdrasil. And in Buddhist and Hindu legends, there are references to Agartha or Shambhala, legendary cities of immense wisdom hidden beneath the mountains, just waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves to the world. These stories all vary in their details, but the core theme is remarkably consistent. The underground is not empty. It's full of meaning. So, the question is, why would human minds, spread across such different geographies and eras, all converge on such similar ideas? Some scholars argue it's a natural extension of our burial practices. When we place our dead in the ground, we create a powerful association between the world below and the afterlife. The earth receives the body, so it must also be the gateway to what comes next. Once you make that link, it becomes fertile ground for myth-making. The underground isn't just where bodies rest, it's where souls travel, where gods live, where entire civilizations might be thriving just out of our sight. But maybe there's more to it than that. When you live your whole life exposed to the elements, the thought of a stable, hidden, protected place is incredibly appealing. If you've ever lost your crops to a sudden storm, or seen predators attack out in the open, the fantasy of a safe, enclosed world right beneath your feet is deeply comforting. The myths of hidden worlds might be less about death and more about a deep longing for security. They could be a collective expression of our wish to retreat from the chaos of the surface and live in a place where the dangers of the world just can't reach us. There's also the simple matter of discovery. Human history is full of moments when people have stumbled across caves filled with the most bizarre and beautiful formations, stalactites and stalagmites that look like frozen waterfalls, minerals glittering like jewels in the torchlight, and chambers so vast they resemble natural cathedrals. Imagine walking into a place like that for the first time, without any scientific framework to explain it. It would feel completely otherworldly. Of course, you'd believe it was the work of gods or the home of beings far different from yourself. Entire imagined civilizations could grow out of that single awe-inspiring experience. And then there's memory. Many cultures pass down their stories orally, with each generation reshaping them just a little bit. A simple story about a tribe hiding in caves during a war could, over centuries, slowly transform into a grand legend about ancestors who lived their entire lives underground. Small, practical truths can expand into powerful myths. Eventually, they take on a life of their own, no longer tied to the specific event that sparked them. By the time those stories reach us, they carry epic themes of hidden kingdoms and mysterious peoples, far removed from their original humble context. Modern psychology adds another layer to this. We seem to be drawn to dualities. We like to imagine opposites, light and dark, heaven and hell, the surface and the underground. These contrasts help us organize the world in our minds. When we think of the sky as the realm of the gods, or our ancestors, we naturally feel the need to balance it with an underworld. One realm above, one realm below. This symmetry just feels right to our pattern-seeking brains. So even if no civilization ever truly lived underground, the idea of it serves a vital symbolic role. It balances the stories we tell about the universe. So, why do we imagine hidden worlds? Because they satisfy so many of our needs at once. They explain the unexplainable. They offer us comfort. They balance our symbolic maps of the cosmos. They feed our longing for secrets, and they remind us of the strangeness and wonder that still exists in the world. Even if we never find a single shred of proof of an ancient subterranean civilization, the fact that so many cultures have imagined one says something profound about us. We are creatures who need to believe that there's more than meets the eye, that the world holds layers of reality beyond what is immediately visible. And perhaps, just perhaps, those stories are not entirely wrong. Because even if the underground isn't hiding a forgotten city, it is hiding countless forms of life we've barely begun to understand. In that sense, our imagination of hidden worlds is always justified. Right beneath our feet, there really are entire worlds we haven't yet seen. Whispers from the deep, Shambhala, Agartha, and the Hollow Earth. When people start talking about hidden civilizations underground, a few specific names almost always rise to the surface. Shambhala, Agartha, and the Hollow Earth. These are more than just passing myths. They've become the anchors for entire traditions of storytelling, belief, and wild speculation. Each one has been shaped and reshaped over the centuries, weaving together threads of religion, folklore, and even what you might call pseudoscience. And together, they show us just how deep the human imagination is willing to dig in search of something bigger than ourselves. Shambhala is probably the most famous of the three. In Tibetan Buddhist tradition, it's described as a hidden kingdom of profound peace and wisdom, located somewhere beyond the reach of ordinary maps. This isn't a place of punishment or darkness, but a source of enlightenment. In some versions of the legend, it's said to be hidden deep within the Himalayan mountains, shielded from the eyes of the unworthy. In others, it exists in a space that is both physical and spiritual at the same time, a place you can only reach when the world is truly ready for it. The earliest mentions we have appear in the Kalachakra Tantra, a very important text in Tibetan Buddhism. Shambhala isn't just a fairy tale in that text. It's treated as a real realm that plays a vital role in the unfolding of history. There's even a prophecy that says, in a future age, when the world is completely overcome by greed and chaos, the people of Shambhala will emerge from their kingdom to restore balance and usher in a new golden age. What makes the story of Shambhala so compelling is how it blends the idea of a hidden world with a kind of moral significance. It isn't just hidden geographically, it's hidden ethically. Only those who are spiritually prepared can ever hope to find it. This makes it less like a lost city you might stumble upon by accident and more like a state of being you have to earn. But for listeners throughout history, it was very easy to imagine it as a physical place too. For centuries, explorers in the Himalayas have been asked by locals if they were secretly searching for Shambhala. Stories of lamas pointing to distant, unclimbed peaks and suggesting that secret, inaccessible valleys held the kingdom have persisted for generations. Then you have Agartha, a related but slightly different legend. Agartha is often confused or blended with Shambhala, and it's said to be an underground realm connected by a network of tunnels that spans the entire globe. In some stories, its capital city is Shambhala, making the two names part of the same grand myth. In others, Agartha is its own separate world, a hidden network where highly advanced beings live in peace, occasionally sending out messengers to guide or influence the destiny of surface humanity. Mainstream interest in Agartha really surged in the late 19th century, when occult and esoteric writers in Europe began describing it as a vast underground kingdom inhabited by enlightened masters. They suggested that these beings were the preservers of ancient wisdom from lost civilizations like Atlantis or Lemuria, and that they would occasionally allow surface dwellers a brief glimpse of their profound knowledge. In these stories, Agartha becomes a perfect utopia right beneath our feet, not just a single hidden valley, but an entire world, carefully shielded from the violence, pollution, and chaos of the surface. Writers described it in incredible detail, claiming it glowed with its own internal light, was powered by unknown forms of energy, and was populated by beings who had transcended all the normal human limitations. For people living through the immense upheavals of industrialization and world wars, the idea of such a place was deeply appealing. It offered hope that somewhere, untouched by greed and conflict, true wisdom and peace endured. Then there is the Hollow Earth theory, which takes these myths and stretches them into something even grander and more ambitious. Instead of just imagining hidden kingdoms in isolated caverns or tunnel networks, the Hollow Earth theory suggests that the entire planet is hollow on the inside, with vast open spaces, maybe even with its own oceans and continents, existing right below the crust. In some versions, a small central sun hangs in the middle, lighting this inner world and creating conditions where life could thrive. In others, the interior of the Earth is connected to the surface by massive openings at the North and South poles. The idea of a hollow planet isn't actually new. It first appeared in Western science as early as the 17th century, when the astronomer Edmund Halley, the same guy famous for the comet that bears his name, suggested that the Earth might be composed of multiple concentric shells, one inside the other. He was trying to explain some unusual compass readings he had recorded, and though his proposal was just scientific speculation, not myth, it opened the door for all the later, wilder imaginings. In the 19th century, Writers and fringe explorers seized on the concept. Novels like Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth made the idea of a hollow Earth vivid and exciting in popular culture. And in the centuries since, fringe theorists have kept the idea alive, insisting that governments and scientists are hiding evidence of the polar openings, or that strange phenomena like UFOs are actually advanced vehicles coming from these inner worlds. For those who believe, Shambhala and Agartha are not just metaphors, they are actual societies living within this hollow earth. In these accounts, the ancient legends and the modern theory merge into one. The hollow earth provides the geography, and Agartha or Shambhala are the advanced civilizations that live within it. Sometimes, the inhabitants are described as highly evolved humans. Other times, they are imagined as entirely different beings, giants, spiritual masters, or the last survivors of ancient cataclysms who retreated below ground for safety. Skeptics, of course, are quick to point out that modern geology completely rules out a hollow earth. Seismic data, the study of how earthquake waves travel through the planet, clearly shows that our planet has a solid structure of layers: a crust, a mantle, a liquid outer core, and a solid inner core. There is simply no room for vast, empty spaces. But the lack of scientific plausibility has never managed to erase the appeal of the idea. Myths are not bound by physics. They are bound by what resonates with our deepest hopes and fears. And what resonates here is the dream of hidden perfection. The surface world is chaotic, violent, and unpredictable. But maybe, just maybe, there is a place beneath it all, where perfect order and wisdom prevail. Maybe the real, uncorrupted history of humanity is being quietly guarded underground, just waiting for the right time to re-emerge. This is the ultimate promise of Shambhala, Agartha, and the hollow earth. That we are not alone, that the world is layered with incredible secrets, and that life is so much larger and stranger than what we can see. It's fascinating how these legends adapt to the needs of their time. In ancient Tibet, Shambhala served as a spiritual anchor, a reminder that enlightenment was possible even in an age of turmoil. In 19th century Europe, Agartha reflected a deep fascination with lost civilizations and secret esoteric wisdom. And in modern conspiracy culture, the hollow earth provides an endless canvas for suspicions about government secrecy and alien influence. Each version changes the details, but the core idea remains exactly the same. There is more beneath us than just stone and soil. Part of their endurance comes from the sheer reality of geography itself. Mountain ranges like the Himalayas are filled with hidden valleys and caves, many of which are still completely unexplored. The Earth's crust really does contain vast networks of natural tunnels, lava tubes, and caverns that stretch for miles. Even though we know they're formed by natural processes, they still feel like evidence that the Earth has enough room to hide something truly spectacular. When someone hears a story about a cave that stretches far beyond what's been mapped, it isn't hard for their imagination to leap to the idea that it might just connect to something much larger, something secret. Stories of explorers stumbling upon the entrances to these hidden worlds only reinforce the myth. Tales circulate about lost adventurers, about mysterious maps handed down through generations, and about entire expeditions that vanished without a trace. Whether these stories are true or just campfire tales, they give weight to the feeling that these places could exist. After all, how much of the Earth's interior have we really seen for ourselves? We've dug deep mines and drilled boreholes, but we've barely scratched the surface when you compare it to the full depth of the planet. That massive, gaping unknown leaves more than enough space for belief to flourish. And so, Shambhala, Agartha, and the hollow earth live on, not as proven realities, but as living, breathing stories. They give us a way to imagine perfection, secrecy, wisdom, and mystery all at once. They let us believe that humanity has not yet uncovered everything, that just out of our reach, there are societies better than our own, perfectly preserved in stone and shadow. Whether we see them as myths, metaphors, or genuine possibilities, they continue to shape how we think about what lies beneath us. They remind us that our fascination with underground civilizations isn't just some modern curiosity, but a long, unbroken thread running through cultures all across the globe. And when we ask tonight what it would mean if the first civilization really did live underground, we're tapping into that exact same current of imagination. We aren't inventing something new. We're joining a conversation that has been going on for centuries, carried forward by monks, storytellers, explorers, and dreamers. In that sense, the legends of Shambhala, Agartha, and the hollow earth are not only about what might be hidden below, but about the incredible continuity of human imagination itself. The science of survival, life without light. To really imagine a civilization living and thriving underground, we have to ask one of the most basic questions of all. Could human life even work without sunlight? The sun is so fundamental to our existence that it feels completely inseparable from the idea of survival. We wake with it, we measure our days by it, and we depend on it to grow the food that keeps us alive. Yet, if we look closely at the natural world, we find that life without sunlight isn't just possible. It's already happening all around us, in places we rarely ever see. The world beneath our feet is filled with incredible examples that show how life can adapt even in total, permanent darkness. The first and most obvious challenge, of course, is food. Plants on the surface depend on photosynthesis, the process of converting sunlight into energy. If you take away the sun, that entire, familiar chain of life seems to collapse. But not all life follows that pattern. In caves, fungi and bacteria thrive without any photosynthesis at all. Instead, they feed on decaying organic matter that gets carried in by water or animals. Some bacteria can even survive on chemical energy alone, drawing all the nutrients they need directly from the minerals in the rock around them. These organisms are called chemoautotrophs. Entire ecosystems have been discovered kilometers beneath the Earth's surface, supported not by sunlight, but by chemosynthesis, the process of using chemical reactions to create energy. Think about the deep ocean, around those hydrothermal vents where superheated, mineral-rich water billows out from the seafloor. Life absolutely flourishes there in complete darkness. Giant tube worms, strange crabs, and bizarre-looking fish live off the energy released by the chemicals in the water. These ecosystems are proof that life doesn't strictly need the sun. It just needs a source of energy and a way to use it. If nature can build entire communities of creatures in those conditions, it's not such a huge stretch to imagine humans finding their own ways to adapt too. Humans, of course, can't live on minerals or bacteria alone. But if the earliest underground people learned how to cultivate fungi, raise insects, or domesticate animals that were already adapted to caves, they could have built a food system completely independent of sunlight. Mushrooms already grow in darkness, thriving on compost, wood, or rich soil. Insects like crickets and beetles can be fed on organic scraps and provide an incredible source of protein. The fish that live in underground rivers and lakes could be caught and maybe even bred in captivity. It wouldn't look anything like surface agriculture, with its vast fields of grain and herds of cattle. It would be smaller, stranger, and probably more fragile. But it could work. Water would be the next big question. And yet, the underground world is far from dry. Aquifers, underground rivers and pools fed by dripping water are common features in most large cave systems. An early civilization could have learned to collect and store this water, maybe even using natural sand and gravel deposits to filter it. In fact, many ancient surface societies already relied on underground channels like the qanats in ancient Persia to bring water to their cities and fields. The knowledge of how to manage underground water is as old as civilization itself. Light is a trickier problem. Fire provides both warmth and illumination, but building a fire in an enclosed space is incredibly dangerous because of the smoke. And yet, we know that ancient people were resourceful. Caves in France still have the soot marks on their ceilings from torches carried by early artists, proving they had figured out methods for lighting deep chambers without suffocating themselves. If an underground society developed further, they might have discovered ways to vent smoke through natural cracks in the rock. Or they may have designed their living chambers in a way that the natural airflow would carry it away. Over time, they might have relied less on fire and more on other glowing materials. Certain minerals fluoresce under the right conditions. Some species of fungi emit a faint, steady light. We know that bioluminescent insects and fish exist right now. It's not impossible that humans living underground could have learned to domesticate or cultivate these natural sources of light. Then there's the question of our health. Without sunlight, humans can't produce vitamin D, which is essential for our bones and overall well-being. But this, too, has potential solutions. Vitamin D can be found in certain foods, like fish, eggs, and some mushrooms. Perhaps an underground society would have relied heavily on these food sources, and over generations their bodies might have even adapted to the lack of sunlight, changing their skin tone, their metabolism, and maybe even their physiology to better suit their dark environment. Science has already documented how animals in caves lose their pigmentation, shrink their eyes, and adapt to living on chemical energy. Humans would change much more slowly, but given enough time, we too might develop unique traits perfectly suited for a life lived in darkness. And what about the mind? Light shapes our entire sense of time. Without it, our natural circadian rhythms begin to drift. Modern experiments with people living in isolation in caves show that their sleep cycles can stretch or shrink, completely unmoored from the 24-hour day. But in a society that lives its entire life underground, these rhythms might adjust differently. Instead of following the sun, people would organize their lives around shared routines, work, meals, and rest, all happening in a rhythm they created themselves. Clocks made from dripping water or burning embers could replace the cues of nature. In some ways, it might even feel freeing, a chance to shape time to fit their own needs. Of course, the psychological effects of constant darkness could be profound. Humans are naturally drawn to light and open spaces. Living underground could feel claustrophobic and isolating. But again, for those born into it, the darkness would be normal. Children who had never seen the sun wouldn't miss it. Instead, they would find safety in the solid stone walls, comfort in the predictable, stable environment, and a deep sense of community in the enclosed spaces. Their myths might even warn them that the surface world is dangerous, chaotic, even cursed. In their view, the underground would be the one true home. It's interesting that modern technology actually makes this idea seem less far-fetched. We've built massive underground bunkers, sprawling subway systems, and even entire subterranean shopping malls and neighborhoods designed to protect people from disasters or extreme weather. In places like Montreal or Helsinki, there are already vast underground networks of shops and homes that shield people from the brutal winters. If we can do all of this now, it isn't impossible that ancient societies could have found simpler, but still effective, ways to live below. When you consider that the Earth itself offers so much available space, underground caves that stretch for miles, lava tubes wide enough to fit entire buildings, sinkholes that open into chambers the size of stadiums, the idea starts to feel almost natural. So, could life without sunlight work? All the evidence suggests that yes, it could. Not easily, and not without incredible adaptation and creativity, but it is possible. Fungi, insects, fish, and bacteria all prove that entire ecosystems can thrive in darkness. Our own ancient ancestors proved that caves could be used for art, for ritual, and for survival. And modern examples prove that underground living is perfectly feasible with the right planning. When you put all of these pieces together, a picture begins to emerge. A world where human civilization could indeed put down its roots deep beneath the ground, away from the sun, away from the chaos of the surface, quietly sustaining itself for generations. And if that really happened, we might never know it. Because an underground civilization, if it managed to endure, would leave very few traces on the surface. It could remain hidden forever, its entire history sealed in stone, its stories told only by those who lived them. The rules of the dark. If you get a large number of people together, rules will emerge. Sometimes they're spoken aloud, and sometimes they're just understood, but they are always there. A single family might be able to live without them, but a civilization cannot. For a society living underground, survival would depend not just on food and water, not just on air and architecture, but on how people agreed to live with one another. The stone itself would enforce certain laws. Space is limited, resources are fragile, mistakes are incredibly costly. But beyond those natural pressures, people would have to decide for themselves how to share, how to lead, and how to keep chaos from tearing their world apart. Leadership, for example, would be about more than just authority. It would be about responsibility. In such a demanding environment, leaders would likely be chosen not for their physical strength or their wealth, but for their wisdom, their patience, and their absolute reliability. Those who could think carefully, who could balance the needs of the community fairly, would be the ones to rise. The elders would almost certainly play a central role. In a world of darkness, memory is survival. The older generation would remember which tunnels are prone to collapse, which water sources have turned poisonous in the past, and which ancient rituals have kept people steady through the hardest of times. Their authority wouldn't just be respected, it would be essential. The rules around resources would have to be incredibly strict. On the surface, abundance allows for waste. But underground, every single scrap matters. Food would be rationed. Water would be distributed according to need. Every bit of fuel for light and heat would be carefully conserved. The punishments for breaking these rules might be severe, not out of cruelty, but out of sheer necessity. To steal food in an underground society isn't just theft. It's an act that endangers the lives of everyone. Such a society might develop codes of fairness and sharing that are so deeply ingrained they feel sacred. Conflict, of course, would still exist. Humans argue and compete no matter the environment, but underground, you can't allow conflict to fester. The walls are too close, the echoes carry too far, and everyone's lives are too interdependent. So, systems for resolving disputes would have to be formal and effective rituals of mediation, community councils, or final decisions handed down by the elders. The harshest punishment might be exile, because to cast someone out into the deeper darkness, alone and without support, would be a fate far worse than death. Religion or a shared belief system would likely be woven deep into the fabric of their social order. Leaders might not only govern, but also guide the community spiritually, reinforcing the rules with myths and rituals. Ceremonies held around a central fire, a sacred pool of water, or a cavern filled with glowing fungi could serve as powerful reminders of their dependence on one another and on the fragile environment that sustained them. This is how practical survival rules become sacred cultural laws, carried from one generation to the next, not as commands, but as timeless traditions. What emerges from this is not a chaotic mob of survivors, but a disciplined, ordered, and deeply resilient people. Their rules might seem harsh to us, but to them, they would be as natural as the stone around them, the very shape of life itself. Returning to the surface. We've wandered through these shadows for a long while now, tracing the faint outline of a civilization born in darkness. And as our journey bends toward its end, there's the quiet task of returning to the surface, of letting the light seep back in without shattering the mystery. The thought of a hidden world reminds us of something important about ourselves. We are creatures of curiosity. We dig, we search, we imagine, and we create stories to fill the void. Perhaps no civilization ever truly thrived in eternal night, but the act of asking, of wondering, is itself precious. It keeps a little bit of mystery alive in a world that often feels like it's been mapped and measured to death. And that mystery is not the enemy of reason. It's where reason begins. Every great discovery starts as a question, a possibility that sounds impossible right up until the moment it isn't. The story of a hidden civilization also gives us a way to reflect on our own world. If survival in the dark required perfect balance, restraint and cooperation, then perhaps that is a lesson for us. Our world on the surface is bright and open, but our resources are not infinite. The imagined people of the dark become a mirror, reminding us that true endurance isn't about endless expansion, but about finding harmony. But it isn't only lessons we carry out of the tunnel. It's wonder. The wonder that perhaps, somewhere, something still waits to be found. Unexplored caves still stretch for miles. The Earth's crust is full of silence and secrets. We may never find definitive proof, but we will keep searching, if not with shovels and drills, then with stories. Because stories are our way of keeping the unknown alive, of making the dark feel a little less empty. So here, as the story winds down, it's time to step back. The air grows a little warmer, the deep shadows begin to thin. The echo of our footsteps fades until it vanishes completely. The ceiling lifts, and the sky returns. The imagination doesn't shut down, but it follows us, whispering in the back of our minds, reminding us that the world is bigger and stranger than it seems. Thank you for walking through this thought experiment with me, for sitting with the questions rather than rushing for the answers. If you found a little bit of calm in this exploration, I hope you'll consider returning for more journeys like this one. And as always, wherever you are, and whatever time it may be for you, may you find some rest. May you carry a little wonder with you, and may the questions linger, just enough to make tomorrow feel a little more mysterious than today.